To start with, we actually have the labor income, like the salary, the consulting income, or royalties if you're a writer, the script income. These four types of labor income will be grouped together. And then if you're a tax resident under the new definition, then they will be under the same tax income bracket from 3% up to 45%. So it means in the past they are taxed at different rates, some are 20%, so it's more simple. But in a way, for some of the people, like the consultancy income, it could start from, in the past it's 20 to 40%, now it will be up to 45%. So for some people it may be higher tax, but generally for most people who are employment earner, then that is a general reduction. What happens is similar to Hong Kong, they widen the tax bracket. So it means for same range of income, it will actually be charged at a lower tax rate now in China. So in simple terms, the tax reform is trying to deliver a tax reduction nationwide, whether you are expatriate or domestic local Chinese. Okay, so we talk about the grouping of income and then the tax bracket being widened, and then we also have very important is they have the itemized deduction. Because in China the deduction are really for your personal expenses, really a lot. So but they are trying to tie international standard. For example, in Hong Kong we have a lot of deductions, so it's quite similar. In that now we have the home loan interest deduction in China, or you can have the rental expense deduction. And also they take into account is similar to an allowance that if you have child education, there is a fixed allowance that you can claim. If you are a tax resident in China, and you also have a parental support, then there is another allowance. So I think the itemized deduction is really, they heard what people are asking for many years, and now China consider that it's right time we have the enough framework to match this support. Because when you allow people to have all these deductions, then you have to have the check and balance, and also how much cost will take to allow these deductions. So I think that's very important. It's the right time that China consider 2019 is the year to roll out this itemized deduction. And bear in mind, it's a keep changing. It means that in the future, it could be modified, maybe more deductions to claim, higher cap for you to claim. So it's not really just once and all, so it's all done, then there's no more benefit for you to claim. I don't see that way. I think it's evolving. And then I think the last two is really about, we have the anti-avoidance rule finally introduced into the personal tax regime. It had been in the corporate tax regime for many years, so we can leverage on experience from the corporate side to see how we can operate the anti-avoidance rule and how we should be compliant under that principle. So, and the last one is really about tax identification number, because in the past, if you have a tax filing in different cities, the reference number may not be the same because it's a locally run system, right? But now going forward, they will actually identify everyone. You will be allotted one single tax identification number. Basically, it's similar to Hong Kong. We have our Hong Kong ID card as our tax file number. So in a lot of other transactions, we use the ID to identify the same person. So now in China, it will be the same. Once you have the TIN, the tax identification number, which for local Chinese essentially is their China ID card number. For expatriate, it could be our home return permit from Hong Kong and all this, but basically the same number will be used across the board. So it means that they can track you down easily. But from the taxpayer's perspective is actually you have to be better, more compliant, because the heightened risk of detection for any non-compliance. But if you're positive, if you're a compliant taxpayer, you have nothing to worry about, but it's a betterment for yourself because everything will be synchronized under one number. Then actually, I think it's more efficient for you to live and do business in China. I think firstly is a good communication with the employees. So when I talk about the main changes in China reform, for people from Hong Kong, we are actually quite concerned about when I talk about resident or non-resident. What happens is if you're a tax resident, it means that from 2019 onward, if you spend 183 physical days in China in a calendar year, you are a tax resident in China, and you'll be taxed on your worldwide income. So suddenly people were so panicked last year that, well, if I'm spend 6 months in China, then I'll be taxed on my worldwide income. So in the past, they have a safe harbor rule. So if you have 5 consecutive full years in China and you don't have some absence from China, some conditions, then you'll be taxed on your worldwide income from the 6th year onward. Now in the new rule from 2019 January 1st onward, basically what they said is up to 2024, if you spend 183 days or more in China on a calendar year for consecutive 6 years, then without going out of China on a single trip of more than 30 days, then actually from the 7th year onward, you will be taxed on your worldwide income. So people are concerned about the investment income in Hong Kong, or share disposal, residential property disposal, and all these gains are huge, okay, the gain. And if you are being taxed on the 20% on that, that will be actually maybe more than your annual bonus or salary increment. So that's why I think to echo is the employee communication is really important. It's all in their mind. And we heard some of the people think they may want to quit the job if there's no proper communication or safeguard to put in place to avoid any worldwide tax. For example, if your employee is stationed in China, whether you arrange to ensure that they will come out for the tax break during the 6 years to come, I think that is really important for them. And secondly is what about their past history, how to deal with that. And I think the other thing is about how we put people there. If there are people that usually they are frequent traveler, do we really need them to spend 183 days in China? Or can we be more efficient, how we deploy the functions so that we can have people simple life, just test in Hong Kong so that they feel more comfortable. I think we have to map each function across the board to see who has to spend 6 months or more, who a lot. And I think also it's about the remuneration policy. If they are going to be affected by the child tax changes, then how will be their pay and so forth. So I think that is really important as well. Yeah, I will say it depends on how you manage it. Okay, because when there are rules, of course there will be costs for compliance. But then if we talk about cost, then we'll compare what is the current tax cost compared with the future. So typically when we look into this salary income cost, because on the lower income bracket it has been widened, so it means basically it's a tax reduction for everyone. But for high income earner, then the tax changes may not be very significant. But then you have the itemized deduction for resident. Then we have to, of course, for overseas, like people in Hong Kong, we are considered expatriate for child tax purposes. Then in the new rule, they said you either stick to the existing benefit for expatriate, we have housing, child education are exempt to the extent they are reasonable. Usually this amount will be greater than the itemized deduction threshold. So pretty much people may stick to the existing rule. So I mean the exemption for expatriate for some fringe benefit will continue for 3 years to come. It's 1920 and 2021. So for them, at least for this 3 years, it's no change. Basically, you still have the same enjoyment of reduction. And then so I think on that is a part. And then the general tax bracket has been lower. I mean for some of the wage. And then what happened is really about how we send people in. And also, I think the uncertainty is about for expatriate, sometimes we are entitled to a time apportionment claim, days in, days out taxation. So that part of the rule are expected to be released either late February or the latest will be in March. When that comes out, then we will see how whether it's better or less attractive. So what we heard is it will be better. Okay, so it means that you may pay a lesser tax. So let's stay tuned for the news from central government. Yeah.